give us a presentation on distracted driving.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. My pleasure. So what I want to talk to you about today is distracted driving. This little girl in 2015 changed my life. She was run over by a driver. She was in the middle of a crosswalk. Now in 2015, I couldn't understand, why did this driver not see this little girl standing there to be seen in the middle of the street? So in 2015, no one was really getting cell phones and doing downloads. But we got the driver's cell phone, we downloaded it, and this is what we found. Now, I don't think anyone can see this from back there, right? Right. You're younger than me, but your eyes aren't that good. So let me try and, so she is unfortunately killed at 5:06 p.m. I want to show you what this driver was doing in the 10 minutes before he runs her over and kills her. So what we have from the download is his cell phone, and at 4:57, he's on Facebook while he's driving. Then he goes and he sends a text message, sends another text message. Then he gets on the web and he's looking for something on the internet. Then he sends 3 more text messages in the next 3 minutes. Then his final text at 5:05 and 51 seconds is okay, because apparently he's running late to go to the casino to meet his friends. And the next minute he kills her. And what I realized from this is it really opened up my eyes, because I'd already been a car accident lawyer. This is all I do for over 20 years before this case happened. But even I had no idea, just doing car accidents for a living, just how dangerous distracted driving is and how prevalent it is. And it's everywhere. And it really has become, for your generation and for everybody out there, a real safety epidemic. So I want to show you a couple interesting slides. So when you text and drive, your likelihood of being involved in a crash increases by 23 times. Someone who is paying attention and driving carefully. 23 times of a greater risk of being involved in a crash. If you're dialing a cell phone while you're driving, your odds of being in a crash increase 12 times. So I actually think this is low. But what this slide says is that right now, 26% of all car crashes on our roads today are caused by people who are distracted driving. Now, why do I think this is low? Because unless you have a fatal, police do not do downloads of cell phones. And unless you have a lawyer who actually knows how to do this, and I gotta tell you, I've been teaching lawyers all over the country how to do this, but the vast majority still don't do this. So unless you have someone who is gonna get that cell phone and download it, the vast majority of these crashes, they're never being properly classified as distracted driving. But it's everywhere. But 26% is what we do know. So how does it compare to drinking and driving? The thing that's fascinating to me about this is the same people who would never in a million years drink and drive have no problem whatsoever texting and driving. But it's just as dangerous. It is literally just as dangerous to be texting as it is to have Michigan's threshold for blood alcohol, 0.08. So it's equivalent to basically you're driving while you're drunk. And what people don't understand, because we're driving these really dangerous machines, these moving brick walls, and we're driving our cars and our SUVs and our trucks, it's just the sheer force and velocity of these moving brick walls when you're driving distracted. So the average person who is driving and sending a text is taking their eyes off the road for about 4.6 seconds. Someone who is driving 55 miles an hour and takes her eyes off the road for 4.6 seconds travels the entire length of a football field from end zone to end zone in 4.6 seconds. If you're driving and you take your eyes off the road to look at a text, you've just driven the length of that entire football field in the snap of your fingers. And that's why there are so many of these crashes happening. That's why there's so many people dying. This is another case I had. This is a lady who puts on Facebook, the minute before she kills my client, that she's trying to stay awake. She puts that on Facebook, and the next minute she kills someone who I ended up helping with their family. But when you go home, when you leave school today, and you look to your left and you look to your right, what do you see when you're driving home, right? You see people on their cell phones, and they're sending texts. There are an extraordinary number of people that are doing this every day. Right now, at this moment in time, there are 660,000 Americans driving and texting at the same time on our roads. We're driving distracted. And the worst part is, people do have a general understanding of how dangerous it is, but they're still doing it. So even though 95% of people say they're aware that driving distracted is dangerous, 35% admit that they're still doing it. And those are the ones who admit. So I can only imagine how many are actually doing it and aren't admitting it, right? But it goes to show you, and it's scary. And it's an education issue. Because while at least for your generation, you're being more exposed to this when you're getting your license, you gotta remember for your parents, people who are older, where this technology didn't really exist, where they were getting their driver's licenses and learning how to drive, they have a vague idea that it's dangerous, but they have no idea how dangerous it is. And this is how it affects your generation. Because distracted driving is the #1 killer of teens. So Michigan has 2 laws I want to tell you about. And the first is regarding texting and driving. And what it basically says is that for everyone who has a driver's license, if you're driving a car, you cannot text. That is under Michigan law considered a primary offense, meaning a police officer can pull you over just for watching you text and drive. And they're starting slowly to actually take this more seriously, as more and more people are being killed and seriously injured every year. So you're starting to see this happen more and more often. The other law that really applies to most people, I think, in this auditorium is Kelsey's Law. So Kelsey's Law is named after a young woman who was 17. His name was Kelsey Raphael, who died distracted driving. And I was one of the people that testified before the Michigan legislature that helped pass this law, along with her mom, Bonnie, who's just an amazing, amazing woman. But what Kelsey's Law says is that for any one of you who has a level 1 or level 2 graduated driver's permit, basically you can't touch a cell phone. You can't look at a cell phone, you can't dial a cell phone, you can't text, you can't talk. There's also right now, because I did end up just testifying to the legislature about this, a current bill that would outlaw hands-free driving, texting, and talking on cell phones. And the reason that we're going to get to in a couple minutes is that, believe it or not, driving with hands-free, the science shows is just as dangerous as driving holding a cell phone and actually texting or talking on that cell phone. You wouldn't think it, right, because it's hands-free, but in terms of cognitive impairment and the problems with processing, to being able to see and react, to be able to make good driving decisions, it all is impaired to the same extent with hands-free driving as it is with actually holding a cell phone. So what is distracted driving? Driving while engaged in any activity that could divert a person's attention away from the primary task of focusing on the road. Folks, it's everywhere. I mean, I've had cases where people were eating spaghetti on their way to work, applying makeup, shaving. Unfortunately, I was involved in a case that made national TV in Arizona, where a police officer was killed because a truck driver was streaming porn. And so he was distracted, let's say, and lost control and killed a police officer. But this is happening all over. I mean, it's Netflix, it's Facebook, it's Instagram, it's Snapchat, it's everything. It's all distracted driving. So a lot of this is cut off, but basically what it shows is that even though everybody knows that distracted driving is unsafe, people are still continuing to drive distracted, and it's continuing to get worse. This is Kelsey. This is Kelsey Raphael. This is a young lady I was telling you about that Kelsey's Law in Michigan was named after. Beautiful, sweet girl. This was a car she was driving when she lost control and when she was killed because she was sending a text. So in her honor, my law firm teamed up with her mom, and we give a scholarship. Actually, we give over $5,000 worth of scholarships every year to help spread the message of just how dangerous distracted driving really is. The lady in the black t-shirt, that's Kelsey's mom, Bonnie. And then the lady next to her, kind of the short blonde haircut, that's the mayor of Grand Rapids that year, or currently still, and the scholarship award winner. That's me from the Michigan Union with a couple winners and some previous winners. But what we do is we've got a series of different scholarships. One is the best text, best graphic image, best video, and best overall. And I'd encourage you, if you would like, if you haven't already, you can get on our website and see what some of these past year submissions look like. I really encourage you to submit and apply for the scholarship. And the reason that we do this, to understand, is this. Because at the end of the day, I can give as many talks to different high schools around the country as, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I said, right? What's going to matter is that when you get home and you're driving with your mom and dad, if they're texting and driving, if they're driving distracted, the science shows that you are far more likely to be driving distracted as well. It's not what you hear from adults. It's what you see and how things are modeled in front of you. Now, in fairness, you guys kind of gave your mom and dad a little bit of a pass, like I said, because they don't have the benefit that you have of really understanding now just how dangerous distracted driving is. But my hope is that all of you are change agents, that you will help educate your parents and your friends and your peers, and they'll listen to you. Whereas they might not always listen to, you know, someone else who's just talking and giving a message, right? So that's why we have the scholarship, because it's under the premise that frankly, people your age are going to be able to communicate more effectively and more persuasively with other people your age. So, you know, my hope is when I give these talks is that you're going to take home and share with your mom and dad and others just how dangerous this is, just how many people are being killed, and that you can help to really save lives. So why do you think, because there's some science here that's really interesting, why do you think so many young people your age drive distracted? So the answer is, and this is really interesting, guys, your brains are technically, what a neuroscientist would say, is that you're all cognitively impaired. Congratulations. So what the neuroscience has shown is that for all of you, for everyone in this room, your brains are still developing, and in particular, the prefrontal cortex of your brain is still developing, and it's going to continue to develop until you hit the age 25. Now, that's important because what does the prefrontal cortex do? prefrontal cortex regulates impulse control. In other words, disinhibition. So that when you get that text, because your prefrontal cortexes are still developing, you're actually not quite as able as someone who's a little bit older to resist that text, that cell phone message, that distraction, whatever it is. But that's why young people your age speed more. That's why you tend not to wear seatbelts as much. And that's why you text and drive so much more than other people. Because your prefrontal cortex, your impulse control, is still developing. So what's interesting is, statistically, you're all awful drivers. You're terrible. Statistically, you are the worst drivers in the country. Now, the other people who you're tied neck and neck with are the really elderly drivers. That makes sense, right? The elderly drivers are starting to have changes in their vision, in gross motor function. They're starting to maybe deal with things like memory issues. Perception reaction time slows. Basically, physically, cognitively, they're not quite as sharp as you are in terms of driving. You guys are terrible for an entirely different reason. You're terrible because even though your reflexes are amazing, even though you have great motor skills, but you've got better vision, you don't have dementia or Alzheimer's or any cognitive issues, but your judgment is terrible. And that's why you guys tend to do things like text and drive. So, I share this with you because you need to be aware that impulse control is always going to be an issue for you and your friends. So obviously, I think you all have probably heard this a million times, but there's a myth that people can multitask. The science is very clear you can't. And the science is even more clear when you're driving a car 6,000 pounds at 55 miles an hour that you can't. And the reason, not to get too hyper-technical, but that third box there, the encoding phase, is what gets impaired when you're multitasking. So what that means essentially is, have you heard the expression that you see somebody but you don't see it? You saw but you didn't process it. You saw the motorcyclist there or the biker, but you didn't really see it. It didn't register. And that's what happens. That's what the part that gets impaired when you're distracted driving, is your brain isn't, even though they see it, it doesn't process that someone is there, whether it's a car or a person or a little girl in a crosswalk. And that's how most of these crashes occur. All right, so I have a question. Can I have a brave volunteer to ask a question of? Someone to raise your hand? What's your name? Parker, okay. Parker, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me what you think would happen, okay? So, do you have your license? Are you driving?
Yes.
Okay. So, let's say you're driving, and you're one of your very best friends in this room. Want to make fun of someone and point them out to me? What's her name? Sophia, okay. So, Sophia texts you and says, "Where are you?"
I'm currently driving right now.
And you're driving, and you text back. You say, "I'm in the car driving." Okay? And Sophia then proceeds to text you 10 or 15 more times. And you're texting back and forth. Now, Sophia knows, because you've told her, that you're driving, right? That you're in the car. Let's say, God forbid, you then cause a crash and seriously injure or kill someone. Here's my question. Do you think Sophia can also be sued?
Yes. Partially, yes.
Okay, tell me why.
Because she knew I was driving her. She was yelling.
Right. So there's no settled law in Michigan. I've actually worked on this in 4 other states, trying to make this a law. And I think there's a real argument. I think this is where our law is going. It's a law it's a new area of law, and it currently is the law in 4 states. And I think it's coming to Michigan. Now let's say it's your mom, and we have the same fact pattern. So your mom says, why aren't you home for dinner? And you say, I'm running late, I'm in the car, I'm stuck in traffic. And then she proceeds to keep texting you, and you cause a crash. Yeah, right? I think your mom absolutely is liable. Yes?
I'm sorry, you said the person who is not responsible.
Yes. If the person knows that you are driving and they continue to send you text messages, and then you're responding to those text messages, and you cause a crash, I think there's a real good argument that they will be held responsible. And the reason I say that is because that's already the law in Michigan. This is my law, this was my case, where businesses now can be held responsible when they're texting an employee who's driving, and that employee is texting back to their boss, and then he causes a crash. So, you know, what I always say is you can hopefully stay away from your phone and not text and drive distracted for the right reasons or for the wrong reasons. The right reasons are because it's super dangerous and people are being killed. The wrong reasons might be because you're afraid that someone like me might sue you one day and you'll be a defendant in a lawsuit. But I don't care. The point is, whether you do it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, don't do it, right? So I just want to finish, and I'll take whatever questions you have. This has nothing to do with distracted driving, but because, like I said, I do deal with car accidents for a living, I just want to give everybody here, hopefully, 2 thoughts that could better protect you and better protect your family that I see, frankly, almost everybody doing wrong. So I just want to share this with you, if that's okay. The first is there's a really important insurance coverage that almost nobody knows about in the state, and it's called UM and UIM. In other words, uninsured motorist and underinsured motorist coverage. Anybody here ever hear of that? Anybody? We got one. Okay. What does uninsured motorist mean, do you think? I'm sorry?
They don't have insurance for like their vehicle.
Great, right. And then underinsured, do you know what that is?
Yes, it means like they don't have the right insurance.
They don't have enough,
Yes.
right. All right, grab some extra pizza when we're done. You earned that. That was a good answer. So guys, there's a huge problem here that really nobody knows about. I just want to make sure that you tell your parents about it, or if you're paying for your own car insurance, that you know about it. So right now, you have to understand, in Michigan, because our insurance is so expensive, there are so many drivers that are driving without insurance. Okay? Do you know that right now, over 50% of the drivers in Detroit do not have any car insurance? They're driving totally naked, no car insurance. And then the people who do have insurance, most of them are woefully underinsured. Meaning, if God forbid you get in a terrible crash, and by the way, just so you know, statistically, people get in a car crash once every 4 to 6 years. So you can be the best driver in the world, you can be the most defensive driver in the world. It doesn't protect you when someone else runs the red light, or when someone else has their head down because they're texting and driving, and they plow into you. So just remember, it is going to happen statistically. Statistically, you look around this room, and there are going to be a couple of you who, unfortunately, probably are going to be involved in very serious crashes in the next couple of years. So these are really important coverages that can protect you. So, the reason I always talk about these coverages is because they are so cheap. Literally, for the price of popcorn and a drink in a movie theater, you can get really good coverage for uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. And I would really say, especially for your parents, they need to know about this, because almost nobody does. And then this is the number one area where I see people your age get in huge trouble. So, because you guys are really expensive to insure, and I'm sure your parents have told you that when you got your license, car insurance went whoop, right up, right? Okay. So they love you, but they're paying a lot of insurance for you. We have a huge problem, which is many insurance agents, they really don't understand the law, and they give really bad advice. but the effects on you guys are draconian. They are so harsh. So what happens is today is there are a lot of insurance agents out there that tell your mom and dad to fib on the insurance applications and say you're still living at home, even when you move out of the house, especially if you guys are moving to like a little place in Detroit or something when you get your first job. And the reason is because Detroit, it's just more expensive to insure cars there, like with every big city, that would be maybe in Berkeley. So what happens is a lot of your parents get bad advice and they say that you're still domiciled, which means your main address is still at home. That's the worst thing they could ever do. Because what's going to happen, and it will happen to some of you, is God forbid one of you or many of you are going to get involved in a bad crash. You're going to have a lot of injuries. And the first thing that insurance company is going to do is see where you were actually living. And if they find out it's really Detroit and not home with mom and dad, then they're going to say that your policy is voided ab initio for fraud. And now that means that you have no insurance to pay for any of your medical bills. So if you have $1 million in medical bills, you won't have any source to get that paid. And the other thing, and this is the crazy part, but let's say you are completely innocent, and let's say you are paralyzed for life because you're hit by some drunk, coked up Coca-Cola driver who plowed into you. Do you know even if that happens and you're completely innocent, you can't sue? They get off scot-free because you were uninsured. And Michigan law actually bars you from being able to sue someone else who was negligent, who caused your injuries. And all I can tell you is, because I do this for a living, every year this happens, I see kids your age who get literally nothing, and your lives are ruined because parents try to save a couple dollars on their car insurance, and they put your address as still living at home. Tell your parents how dangerous distracted driving is, and tell them not to fib on where you live when you move out of the house, okay? All right. I give a version of this talk to parent groups, to politicians, and various legislatures, and I'm always pleased to give it to high schools. I've given this all over the state, so it's, my hope is that I'm at least opening up your eyes to this crazy safety crisis, this epidemic that we have on our roads today with distracted driving. And I really hope that you guys will be change agents, that you'll share with your friends and with your family and your loved ones just how dangerous this really is. This should not be the #1 killer of teens your age. And this is something that is completely preventable. So I hope this was at least somewhat informative. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. Guys, thank you very much.